Hello, welcome to my video tutorial for the Keanu Backpack by UhOh Creations. It's a wonderful backpack to make. It's one of the best designs I've ever seen, to be honest with you. It's got your pocket on the front, nice and handy for your mobile phone, etc. And then at the back, you've got the option to leave it off, but I think it's worth adding for your laptop or other things, anything you want, files, etc. And then you've got your main compartment, like so, with the zip pockets as well. And I show you a way to finish your bag with binding. If you have arthritis or any other hand and wrist complaints, where you find it hard to stitch bulk under your needle and for turning through pockets at the end, this is a fantastic alternative method which I had to use because I couldn't finish the bag under the machine. So I've actually added a link in the description of this video to my tutorial on how to make and use bias binding. And there's also links for Tara's group and website and my Facebook group as well. And in Tara's group you'll find my labels. I made these labels for keeping track of all the pattern pieces. You really do need it. There's so many different pattern pieces. These will help. So join Tara's group if you're not already in it and grab the labels for making the bag. I did start to show every step I was sewing. I was showing me sewing as well. And then I realised the video, with all of that, it's going to be about 5 hours long, which I thought that's just crazy. So I'm not going to insert the sewing clips. I know you know how to sew, so that they don't really need to be shown. So if I do make reference to them, I apologise that I haven't included them. And finally, the locks. I did think I'd put them on wrong, and so I had to snip and resew. I hadn't put them on wrong. It doesn't really matter because you're using a slider, so don't worry about which way you put them up. So that's it really. Take a look in the links in the description of this video for any links that might be helpful to you. If you're not in Tara's group, do join it because you'll get news of new designs she's brought out, and you'll get help in the group if you need it, and inspiration on people's patterns that they've made of hers. So I hope to see you in the group. Enjoy this video and I'll see you again. Bye. I'm starting by just talking to you about the pattern pieces. I laminate my patterns. Then they're reusable, they're easy to cut or draw around and so on. Have a look at my video that's on my channel on how to prepare the pattern pieces, so you'll see what I do. So having said that, I've used all the pieces and cut out everything I needed to cut out. There's a lot of pieces. So I've got all my exterior pieces, my lining pieces, which I'm also using some of my exterior for, such as the pockets, and then foam, lots and lots of foam, great deal of foam, more foam than I've ever used in a bag, so I'm quite excited to see how this is going to turn out. I have interfaced everything's got the interfacing on. Also, the front flap piece has the fusible fleece attached, and the strap support has the Decoville light attached. If you get them ready first, and what I'm also going to do before we start is base stitch all the foam to the relevant pieces. And then we're also going to place all the markings that we need to put on the fabric, so that we're all prepared to actually just get on and sew. And also we need to have double zippers Now, I buy continuous zips on the roll, like 5-10 metres. And I buy number 5 and number 3. And then I also buy my zip pulls. I don't like the ones that they come with. I think they're a bit dull and boring. So I buy zip pulls. So you don't need to buy a special double zipper. You can just get your continuous zip on the roll and put the 2 zip pulls on. Put one on each end. And hey presto. So I've got 2 of the zips ready. One, I've had to order more of these zip pulls. I didn't have matching zip pulls left. So I've had to order them. They'll be in a couple of days. And then I've got my number 3 zips with just the single zip pulls on. So you need to get them ready as well. And yeah, the beauty of this bag, it may use a lot of foam, which is a bit pricey, but it doesn't use lots of hardware, which is great. Because let's face it, hardware is really expensive. So it's swings and roundabouts, really. So we'll get on. I'll go and baste everything, and we'll continue from there. The first thing we need to make are the strap anchors, handles and straps. So I've already done one to show you that this is what we're going to make first. And for that you need the strap bottoms, which are the 18-inch straps. You'll have cut 2 that measure 24, which are the strap tops, and 2 that measure 18 inches, which are the strap bottoms. If you're using a print fabric such as I have, try to think about where you're cutting this piece in half, so that I don't want to cut it through so that I've got that. I want to cut it in half that way so I can see that. Just like that one there, really. It's these little details that can make quite a difference. And we're just going to cut right across so that we've got 2 triangles. These are our strap anchors. And what we need to do now is put them right sides together. And we just want to stitch down one side, or across one side. Just going to stitch across the bottom there. So I've stitched across the bottom. I will just say that there will be times I will show you when I'm stitching. And there'll be other times I don't show you. I mean, I don't need to show you how to stitch that short straight line. So we've stitched across the bottom part. And now we want to get our strap bottom and put it in there and have 2 inches sticking out. Like so. And then we just want to take it to the machine and stitch a 1/4 inch seam allowance down that edge as well. So we've stitched a 1/4 inch a seam allowance there. Lay this in and have 2 inches poking out of the back and stitch 1/4 inch seam allowance. So that's how your piece should be looking now. And we're going to turn this right side out. So all I want to do is just snip that little corner there. Not much, just a tiny bit, just to reduce the bulk of the corner. And then we turn it right sides out, like so. And I just like to use a tool just to push the corners through, just to make sure that it's as neat as we can get it, like so. And we're going to be stitching like we did here. We're going along and up, and we're going to keep doing that. But what I like to do, just to make sure it doesn't slip and that the strap stays where it should stay inside, is to place some double-sided tape along the strap edge like so. Peel the backing off. And then I just want to make sure that the strap then lays as close as possible next to that seam edge. So that's holding place in there now. And if you want to, which I do, you can also put some more double-sided tape inside. Along this edge. Now you don't have to do this, but I do this to get an exact neat result. I want it to look as perfect as possible. So I've done that, pulled the tape off, and then lay that across like so. So that's all stuck down, ready to sew. You'll have to excuse my dog, he's barking at the door. So I've brought it to the machine, and we just need to stitch a 1/4 of an inch seam allowance. And then we turn it. And then we go back to the beginning. And we just keep doing this until we get to the very last part that we can stitch. One more bit. I think this will be the last one. And then we just want to baste across this edge. So when you finish stitching, you'll have something that looks like this, hopefully. And we just now want to trim off the excess. Like so. And because this tends to fray, I just go along quickly with the lighter to stop the webbing from fraying like crazy, and I just snip all the thread ends. It's all attention to detail, just tidying everything up as we go. Like so. The next thing we need to make is the handle, and we need to mark a line along the centerpiece, or you can fold it in half, whichever you prefer, lengthways. And I like to get some double-sided tape and place it along the edges. I'm sorry if you can hear some noise in the background. There's a large tannoy outside. I don't know what it's doing, but it's very loud. So you may be picking it up. So we pull the backing off and bring the edge to the centre line that we've drawn, or that you've pressed the crease in. This is my preference. You may prefer to iron the folds in, etc. Please do it as you prefer. My way isn't the best way, it's my way. And you may have your own way to do things as well. So, there we go. And then we just need to put one more line of double-sided tape. And then I fold these together, making sure that the edges are exactly level, because you don't want one side poking out more than the other. And then we take it to the machine and stitch both sides. I wanted to show you, I've stitched my handle, but I've stitched many rows. And you have to try and do it as evenly as possible. It just gives it a much firmer handle. It's a lot of strength. So if you're confident about stitching straight lines, or even draw them on with a heat dissolvable ink, and stitch the lines, and you will get a better handle. If not, don't worry too much. You don't have to do it. It's just something I do like to do. So we set that aside with the straps that we did, and the next thing we're going to do is the longer straps. Now we get one strap right side up that has the foam attached to it, and we want to lay the 24-inch webbing just so that it's an inch past the end. And we just base stitched across the edge there. So I've just base stitched it along the bottom there, and we get the opposite piece that doesn't have the foam on, and we lay them right sides together, and we need to stitch all the ways down, round and up again. The only part we don't stitch is at the very top. You can't pin this out of the way because you're going to be pulling it right side out. So you just need to make sure that it's not in the way when you're stitching around. And you stitch all the way around at 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. Okay, I have trimmed the foam out of the seam allowance, and I've trimmed back one layer of the seam, and the other one I've left, but I've clipped on the curves, and all the curves inwards and outwards. The reason for this is, if you trim everything to one layer, you end up with a bit of a ledge, you know, because you've got lots of layers in one fell stop. But if you layer them back, you'll end up with a slope, which is a much nicer feel. I've already made one of these, and you can see there's no harsh ledge. It's nice and smooth. I suppose that goes back to my dressmaking days, where when you trimmed back in layers rather than in one go. So that's what I do with my sewing. I trimmed the foam more or less back to the seam, making sure I didn't cut the stitches, obviously. Then the one layer of fabric I did near to the foam, but not quite to it. And then I left the other layer. And then we need to turn. And when we turn, if we start by just telling it to go in, you just sort of get the top part and just push it in, so it gives it a bit of a start ahead. And then if you grab the webbing and start pulling from this end, and just grabbing this part while pulling on the webbing, you're just coaxing it to slide along, and you'll get to a point where it will virtually say, oh, I get what you want me to do. You want me to do this. But until then, you just keep coaxing it to go inside, and then at some point it will get it like that, and it will suddenly go, oh, I'm with you. And you just keep pulling and pulling. I mean, I have arthritis, but if I can do it, you just gotta make it believe it wants to do this. It is easy, honestly. I'm making it look harder because of the fact that I don't have a very good grip. But as you can see, it's doable. And I'm just looking for my long knitting needle, like so, and I just push it down inside, just to like push the seams out, like so. And this is a very thick needle. It's not going to go pushing any seams out that I don't want it to. And I also want to press it. I need to turn my iron on. And I mean, it's more or less there. It doesn't really need a press. As you can see, it's behaving beautifully. So I'm going to give this a press, and then we'll come back to do the next stage. I've given it a press, and now we're going to top stitch all the way round. So there, it's top stitched. Now we need to get our web slider. I don't know what you're going to use. This is one I'm particularly using. But if you're not using one like this, and you're using one like Tara refers to, have a look in the group at other people's examples. This is the one I know how to do. And we want to put the web through the top and out through the back, and we need to mark 1.5 inches away from the end here, and that's for the slider to stop at. And I just want to check that that's going to match. Yep. And I'm going to take it to my other machine that's got white thread in. Okay, so I just want to, excuse me if my hand's in the way, it is in the way, I'll try and do it this way. It can be quite awkward sometimes. But I want to lock my stitches. And I'm just doing, I want to make sure that these are on top of each other as well, not odd. Yeah, I just wanted to check that they weren't, and they haven't gone crazy and gone all skew-iff on me. So I've done straight across there, and I'm just going to come straight across, just by 1/4 inch difference. So what I've done is I've gone across there and then across there, just to sort of mark them in place really. And now another thing we need to do, we're going to attach the web to the strap all the way up, and I have my usual cheat by using double-sided tape, which I run along the centre of the web, or webbing, and I stop at 1 inch or 2 above from the end, pull the backing off, and now what we want to do is lay this centrally. You have to coax it because it wants to go straight and you want it to curve. I do hope I'm getting at least some of this on the film. So you want it to go up the middle really, and I don't measure it, I mean just do it by eye. I'm sort of fairly happy with that. I'll show you the one I did here. I did all that by eye, you see, and it looks good on the other side as well. So you trust yourself. This is my Brother Innovis NV1100 machine. I don't tend to use this much for bags. It's not very heavy duty. She likes more delicate things like clothing. And I use my Janome HD9 for my bags. But she does behave on thinner layers. So we want to attach her She's a lot slower than my other machine. I was just checking then that nothing was wrong. It's a bit hard to get used to a machine when you're used to it going at a certain speed. and then go up the other side. So that's the strap attached on that side as well. So here we have both of the straps ready. Do make sure that when you do the straps that you do the mirror image as such. Don't do them so the webbing's on the same side each one, so that they are the mirror image. Trim off any stitches, loose threads, etc., and they're ready to go. Put them aside, and the next part is to construct the exterior front panel. To start constructing the exterior front panel, we need the exterior front pocket piece right side up, and we need our 18-inch zipper. We'll have marked the central points to start with, and we put the zip face down and just line up the 2 points together, and we need to go around and base the zip in place, going all the way around. To do this, I'm actually going to use my trusty double-sided tape that many of you who do follow me know I use in abundance. This would be one of my desert island takes with me. You know, when you pick what you'd take, well, this would be one of them, along with my sewing machine, etc., etc. But I definitely would want my double-sided tape. It'd be interesting to know in comments of my YouTube video what you'd take. What would be your most important thing to take with you that's to do with sewing? Okay, so I've laid some double-sided tape down, and I'll take the backing off. And that'd be easier from this end. Yeah, I thought so. Right. You just have to show the zip who's boss and coax it to follow the line of the pocket edge. This last little bit that it just wants to not do that, so, and take the tape off this side. And I'm also going to add some tape here. You may just have to do like I'm doing and curving it. You sort of bend it towards you. Like so. So you can see that the zip's standing proud. I'm just going to base this in place and then return. Right, I basted it in place, and I did actually show it, but for some reason it didn't record. But I basted it in place, and now what I've done is I've taken the lining piece and I've attached it with some double-sided tape in the same way as we did the first piece, making sure the centre lined up first, and then I went round each side. And now we're going to stitch it at 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. And there we have it, and I've made sure that I didn't get any nasty wrinkles around there. Once you've stitched around, just snip on the curve, snip towards the edge of the seam, and add some fray check just to stop them from fraying further, and then open it up and press away from the zip. And that's what I've done. I've pressed all the way round, and then we want to top stitch, and do the top stitching on the exterior because that's the side everyone's going to see all the time. So you want to make sure that the stitching is perfect on the exterior. And a little tip that I like to do when I top stitch things like this, I want to make sure that the underside is away as well. So by putting a pin in there, I've ensured that this isn't folded over, you know, like, I can't do it now, but folded over, for example, that's it, like that, you know. So pinning it down, make sure that it stays in place for top stitching, so you don't get any rogue fabric where it shouldn't be. And I just like to put pins here and there just to have it so that it's nice and flat and even. Like so. Okay, last one. Right, so that's the top stitching done all the way around. I just want to show you the top stitching, and it's the same on the reverse, thankfully. I would say if you're not happy with your top stitching, it's often worth unpicking and redoing it. I think I've unpicked more top stitching than anything else in my bag making days. So it really is worth doing well, because it can be the difference between a great looking bag and a good looking bag. So once you've top stitched happily, make sure you baste all the way around the edge with the two layers basted together, so it looks like a little pinny now, little apron. So that's that part. And if you need to remark the centre of your zip, which I had to do because I used the heat dissolvable pen, do mark it. I just pulled it out straight and then mark the centre part. And you need to get your front flap exterior, and this is the one with the fusible fleece attached, and you need to put it right side down where the zip is. And you know, it sounds a bit strange, but you're automatically going to want to do that, and that would be wrong. You need to line up your center points first of all. I'm just going to pin that. And then you want to pin or line up the edging all the way around. I'm going to do that, and then I'm going to come back and show it to you. So I've pinned all the way around. It's quite lethal. You could use double-sided tape. I'm not sure that it would hold that well. Anyway, we're going to stitch now a 1/8 of a seam, inch seam allowance all the way around. So I have to be careful to avoid my fingers with these pins as I stitch. Whew, that's that stitched. I show you me doing it, so that you can see it's doable. So there we have the flap attached. Now it's time to put a square peg into a round hole, so to speak. You're going to do something that you think isn't right, and it's not going to fit and so on, but it does, and it works. I use my craft double-sided tape, and that's a red one. This does gum up your needle, but where I'm using it, the needle doesn't go in, so it's okay to use. And the reason why I use this one is, although this one's great and you can sew into this one and it doesn't gum up your needle, this is stronger, so it holds tighter. So I do use this where I don't have to sew through. You used to be able to, but they changed it and now it's very sticky. So I use it sparingly, and it's also very hard to get the backing off. My granddaughter does it in seconds, but she's got very tiny thin nails. Okay, so remove the backing, and we've got the point that's marked, and you've got the back of the exterior that you put on, and you line up the lines like so, and then we attach it going round. Now I did try doing it with pins, and because you're really making it do something it doesn't want to do, the fabric still slipped. So I found that when I did it with pins, the fabric did move a little. So I find this is more reliable. Famous last words. So you are telling it to do something that it doesn't think it can do. And once we've done this, we'll be attaching it with a 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. Like so. Okay, so this is how it looks now. So this is your right side of the fabrics, and this is your lining and the lining. Does that make sense? I hope so. So this is your lining and your lining, and on this side you've got the right side of your flap and the right side of your pocket piece. And we'll take it to the machine and stitch it. Okay, so I've stitched around 3/8 of an inch seam allowance, and now we're going to turn it right side out. See how it looks. Oh, there you go. Now all makes sense, doesn't it? We will be pleating this at the bottom so that it will look a bit better. But that's basically how it is. Now we need to top stitch around the edge like we did on the bottom. We need to top stitch around there. So I've top stitched around, and that's the other side. So what looked to be difficult actually isn't. Just a bit of coaxing and telling the fabric you're the boss and it will go. So it's a very clever design. I just wanted to show you that before we did anything else, but we need to put it back to the way it was when we first stitched it. And we could have done this before we top stitched, but I wanted to do it afterwards, because I wanted to make sure it went and I didn't have to unpick it. So it's fine to do it now. The reason being is we won't just go too far, you won't clip too far, but we just need to clip in the curves that are sort of sharpish. Just clip notches. These clippers of mine are getting a little bit blunt, they're a bit old now. I think I'm going to change to my big scissors. Take my life into my hands using these, but they're sharper, so I just have to be a bit careful. So I do both of these curves on the flap. I like to do this side. And then this part at the bottom of the flap, this is a very important part to clip, so do lots of very small clips, and then you can use fray check if you want to. And this will just help the flap to sit better. So I've clipped these bends and this one, and then when we turn it back through, this should sit proud of the pocket, which it does. Don't be alarmed the fact that it's sitting above, and that is exactly what it should do. So if your pocket looks like this, you've done it right. And the bit we're going to do now is the pleat at the bottom that I just mentioned a little while ago. So we need to get the lining so that we're looking down on it. I'm trying to make sure I'm in the camera shot, because when you're trying to measure things and you're also trying to film, it can be a bit difficult. So we've got the centre mark here that we made originally, and we need to place marks 1 inch either side. So that you've got 3 lines like so, there, there and there. And then we need to pinch the fabric together at one of the marks and fold it to the centre. So you've pinched at the outer mark there, and you pinch it into the centre, and then put a pin in it to hold it there, and then pinch the other line so that the line's there on the fold, and take that to the centre as well and put a pin in it. So it now looks like that. In the drawing it's further apart, but this is correct. Right, so once we've pinched them together so they're looking like that, we just basted at 1/4 inch seam allowance along the bottom, and that's your pleat done, nice and easy. And then what we need to do is get our lining front bottom piece right side up, and then place the pocket piece right side up in front of it, like so. And that will be your pocket constructed. And we based all the raw edges 1/4 inch seam allowance around to attach it. Okay, so I've basted it all the way around and along the top. It all fits beautifully. And if you open up your pocket like so, so we know that works. And the last part of this section is to lay the front top right side down. So we lay it along like that, and we add it at 3/8 inch seam allowance along the top there. So we've stitched along the top at 3/8 inch seam allowance. I don't worry about this zip poking out at the top. And what we need to do now is press this at the top, and then stitch with the seam allowance facing up, top stitch along the top there. So I've top stitched along the top, and I just trimmed the zips down a bit now, and that's the front part done. So we put this aside now as we move on to construct the exterior back panel. Now we need to construct the exterior back panel, and for that we need to get our exterior main panel piece with the foam attached, and we put it right side up, and we need to draw 2 horizontal lines. The first line we draw 3.5 inches from the top edge, and the second line 4 3/8 of an inch from the top edge. So there's 7/8 of an inch between the 2 lines. Then we also want to have a vertical line in the centre. To do that, I use the notches that we'd marked earlier on, top and bottom, to draw the line. I've put a little bit of double-sided tape along each top of the straps, and they're going to be face down. I say face down with the webbing side down. So it is actually right side up. And you need to make sure that you place them not like that, so that they spray outwards. And we're placing them along the 3.5 inch line. So that's the top line that you've drawn in the centre. So you've got the central line and you're right next to it, and they're both laid right on it. And now we want to stitch both pieces 1.5 inches from the bottom edge to attach them. So I've stitched many times. You really want to reinforce these straps because they could at the end of the day be carrying a lot of weight in your bag. So I've literally stitched 1/4 inch seam allowance all the way down, so they're really stuck to the bag. And apologies, we should have prepared this earlier and I just completely forgot, but it doesn't matter. We can prepare it now. And this is the strap support. And you've put your Decoville light on, or if you haven't, you need to now, and you put it centrally. And we just need to put notches into these curves, not quite to the very base of where the Decoville starts, but near, about 1/8 of an inch away. And just on the curved edge, you don't need to on the straight edge. We just need to do it all the way around. Like so. So we've gone all the way around it, and just get some double-sided tape . You don't have to put it right up against the very edge of the Decoville. And along the bottom as well. Okay. And then remove the tape, put back in. And start by folding the edge in. With the bottom corner, do a notch diagonally. And when you fold the corner over, just snip the excess there away, and I'm really being a stickler for making sure it's neat and tidy. So you want to fold this piece down out of the way, so just put a bit of tape there to hold that, so that when you fold up it will stay put and behave like so. And from that side you've got a lovely neat corner. Do the same again on this corner. You can leave this little bit there, but it's just reducing the bulk, so it helps give a crisper corner. Like so, and continue curving it round. Pushing against the edge of the Decaville light. Just need a little bit there for the overhang because they spread outwards. Like so. So we're left with a piece that looks nice and neat like that, with lovely sharp corners. And we just need to get rid of the excess webbing. You don't need to go all the way to the bottom edge. And although we won't be seeing it, I just like to make sure that there's no fraying and continuation by sealing the ends. And we use the bottom line as the placement guide for the support strap. So we just need to mark the halfway point to line up. And put some more double-sided tape to put this in place. Couldn't find the scissors, I was hiding them. Okay. And lining the notch you've just marked in the centre there with the line in the middle. Like so. And now we stitch around at 1/8 of an inch seam allowance, and then again at 1/4 of an inch seam allowance. So you've gone round it twice like that. So that's how that should look. I just clipped these out of the way because they were annoying me, so I just clipped them there. And the next part we need to just add is the strap anchors, which are here. Now, bearing in mind what I said earlier on about the printed part that you want on show, don't go then putting them face down so that you've got the best bits hidden. So we want to place them so that they are on display. And we need to, looking for my ruler, we need to make a mark 1.25 inches up from the bottom edge. This is heat dissolvable ink, but these little bits will be hidden anyway. Get some more trusty double-sided tape, or you can clip or pin it in place. Put it along the raw edge of your strap anchor. Pull the backing off, and then put the bottom point on the mark you placed, like so, so that the strap's going up and across. Like so. And we just want to baste them in place with 2 lines of stitching just to reinforce it. So these have been stitched in place at 1/8 and then 1/4 inch seam allowance, so they're stuck fast. So that's the exterior back panel constructed, and we put that aside. And next we're going to construct the 2 zipper gussets. Now to construct the 2 zipper gussets. Firstly, we need to lay the exterior front gusset that has the foam attached right side up, and we need to get the 32-inch zipper that has the 2 zipper pulls on them. And where we've marked the halfway mark there, and we've also done it with the zip, we need to place it face down, the zip face down onto the gusset piece, and we're going to base stitch this in place all the way along with the 1/8 inch seam allowance. Once we've basted this in place, we then get a lining front gusset piece, and we need to attach it along the same lines with a 3/8 inch seam allowance. So I'm going to clip it together and then stitch at 3/8 inch seam allowance. So we've stitched 3/8 inch seam allowance, and what I've done is I've gone ahead and removed the foam from the seam allowance and the top layer of fabric, leaving the zip and the other layer of fabric intact. This way it's tapered, as I said before. Also, I've snipped into the curves all the way along to help with smooth turning. And we fold over and we press the seam back. And press both sides as well, because you really want it to be a nice crisp edge and the top stitching to look nice. It's worth persevering. and iron both sides. Like so. And now we're going to top stitch all the way along. So I've done the top stitching all the way around, and it looks just as good on the back, and that's due to my little secret. My little tip is to pin everything. I pulled the lining tight and pinned it. I did it all the way along, and that always gives me a good result with my top stitching. I have done a tutorial on my channel about it, so do take a look. So that's my top stitching, and we're just now going to baste along this edge to put all the layers together. Now that we've stitched along here, it's time to add the back gusset to the opposite side of the zip. So as we did with the first side, we need to base stitch the zip along here. So I shall do that and come back. So we've base stitched it along there. What I did was I lined it up in the centre, and I started in the centre and worked my way out and did the same. That way I knew it was lined up. If you start at one end, you could end up in the wrong place. So that's the best thing to do. And then we get our lining part of the gusset, and I'm sorry about that noise, bird that's making all that noise out there. And we line that up as before with the other one, and attach this in the same way, but we do at 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. I've stitched this one in now, this side in. I will say I found it much easier because of the bulk and the narrowness. I use a zipper foot, so you may like to try using a zipper foot rather than a walking foot to stitch it in. And the only thing left now to do, I'm going to trim the foam out of the gusset, out of the seam as before, and then clip round the curves before turning. Then I'll turn it, press it, and top stitch it. So I shall come back shortly. So I've trimmed the foam out of the seam, and I've also trimmed one layer of the fabric out. So I've got one layer of fabric in the zip left, and then I've snipped into them all to help with it bending this way. It all makes a big difference. And then we need to press it as we did with the other side. Like so. And then when I finish pressing it, I'll pin it as I showed you earlier, and then top stitch. So we need to press both sides. And then I shall pin and top stitch. I wanted to come back and show you what I do. I hold on to the fabric there, and I pull the lining as tight as I can, holding on to it, and then pinning it through all the layers. and as you can see, it's pulled nice and tightly, and that's what I do. And then it's ready for top stitching. You need to get your gusset and find the center point, and then mark 1/2 inch either side, and then get the handle that you made earlier on and put one side next to the run line, and do it so that the folded line, it's hard to explain, so that the joined pieces are on the inside, so that the folded edge is on the outside and the two edges that come together like so are on the inside. And I've put some double-sided tape there just to hold that in place, and we're just going to stitch over a couple of times at 1/4 inch seam allowance to stitch them in place. So I attached the handle at 1/8 and then 1/4 inch seam allowance, and I've gone over it a couple of times. That's really stuck down. And now we need to get our base pieces, and we put the lining base right side up to begin, and then we get our gusset, and with the handle nearest to you, lay the gusset end at the end of the base piece, and you should find that they're the same width. Don't worry that it's not the same width in the center, that's normal. It's at the end that matters, so everything fits nicely there. And then you need to get your external or exterior base piece and lay that right side down on top, and then we'll just stitch across to join all three together at 3/8 inch seam allowance. So I stitched it together, and then I trimmed out the excess foam, and I'm just pressing the end and then we just need to top stitch at 1/8 inch seam allowance on the base side, not the gusset but the base side. So there's the top stitching, and now we need to join the other end in the same way. So lay the, whichever way you do it, you can, I'm laying the exterior down, and then the end of the gusset, and then the lining on top, and stitch all three together to join them that way. So when you stitch the ends together, you'll be looking at it like that. So you've got the lining together and the gusset together. Then turn the right side out, and as before, I'll just press the end and turn over and press the end, and then just top stitch across there. So here we have the gusset complete, and all we need to do now is just base stitch all the along both edges to join all the layers together. The first part of the gusset we did is already done, So we just need to join this part. So I've stitched all the edges together all the way around, and that's the gusset piece that we'll lay aside for now, and the next part is the laptop zip. For this next part you need the laptop zip and zip pieces, and if you're only using one zip pull, you need to make sure that the zip is closed and the pull is at the top for attaching this. So you would be looking like this, and the zip pull would be at the top with it closed. So I've put some double-sided tape along what is the right edge and peel the backing off. You don't have to do this, you can use clips or pins to attach it. And we're going to lay the zip right side down. I'm just lining up the marks that we made earlier for the centre. And then we're going to baste this at 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. However, because I'm using double-sided tape, I don't need to baste it. So I'm going to attach the lining side piece as well. So imagine if you're not using double-sided tape and you've basted, that's fine. And then you get the lining side, the lining piece, and again I'm laying double-sided tape along the edge. Like so. And then we lay the lining right side down on top. So, to recap, you have your lining, sorry, the laptop zip exterior right side up. Then you place your 24-inch zipper right side down, and you can stitch at 1/8 of an inch seam allowance, or if you've used double-sided tape like me, you can skip that part, and then lay the lining laptop zip piece right side down on top, and then we stitch at 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. So I'm going to do that with my zipper foot. So I've stitched it at 3/8 of an inch seam allowance, and I've actually gone ahead and removed the excess foam from the seam just to give a neater finish. And then we just need to press it back out of the way, away from the zip, and then we're going to top stitch. But as well as top stitching, we're actually going to baste it all the way around, which I will show you when I've done it. And as I do with all my top stitching, I'm going to pin, oops, dropping things. I'm going to pin the lining and the gusset together to give a good result. So there it is, all stitched and basted around the edge. And you need to get your laptop gusset pieces now, and you should find that this is the same measurements, the same width, and hopefully you will. And you need to get the lining piece right side up, and then lay the gusset piece that you've made right side up also. A lining, if you're using one zip, so that the zip's closed and the zipper pull is at the top. And then we get our gusset piece exterior and lay that right side down. So the lining is right side up, the zip gusset you've made is right side up, and then the exterior laptop gusset piece is right side down. And we stitch at 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. So I've stitched at 3/8 of an inch seam allowance, and then you need to pull the gusset pieces back and just give them a press. And then just top stitch across the ends. So I've top stitched, and then we need to repeat the same at the other end, making sure that the lining pieces are together. So the lining is right side to the lining. I'm just going to trim my zip that's too long, so it makes it easier to line everything up. So the lining is right side up, and this time the zip is right side up as well, so that the lining sides are together, and then the exterior is right side down. And make sure that none of it is twisted. So let me which this is, so that's why it's worth checking. So that's not twisted now, so you should end up with 2 loops like that. And then again stitch at 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. So I've stitched across at 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. I've removed the foam from the seam, and again press this open. And just top stitch across this part again. So once you've stitched both pieces and top stitched, we just need to baste all the way around the long edges to attach the lining and the exterior together. And then once we've done that, we set it aside. So I've basted all the way around, and we lay that aside, and next we're preparing the lining. Now we're preparing the lining, we need to get some of the zipper pocket panels, and we lay it right side up, and if you're doing a directional print it's downwards, and then you get your 10-inch number 3 zip, and you want to lay it right side along the top edge. I've already put some double-sided tape, so right side up along the top, and we just stitch along at 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. Once we've stitched along there, we need to press away from the fabric like so, and then we get another pocket piece, and this time upside down, so that when it's folded down it will be the right way up, if that makes sense. And then we want to lay some more double-sided tape and place the zip right side up. And stitch that at 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. So we've stitched them both and we've pressed the seams open, and then we just pop that aside for a moment, and we get one of the zipper facing pieces and lay it face down, and we just need to draw a line 3/4 of an inch from the edge, and 1 inch in from the end. And then turn it round and do the same on the other side. And then just draw the sides of the box at each end. So you should find that you've got 1 inch either side at this end and 3/4 of an inch either side, and this box should measure 3/8 of an inch, which it does, so that's good. And now we need to get one of our main lining pieces, and make sure it's one without the foam. There's a fluff everywhere, and we just need to measure 4.5 inches from the top edge, I'm just laying this with the edges straight so that I know it's straight, and I've got that 4.5 inches, and I've lined it up with the centre notch that we've put there. I'm just going to quickly measure the centre of the zipper facing. And So you want to line the centre up with the centre mark here, and then just pin it You're probably thinking, gosh, she's not using double-sided tape. Don't for this bit. So just pin it either end and then just pop another one in the middle just to stop it from moving. And then what we want to do is sew the box that we've drawn. Just literally sew on that. So we've stitched around the box, and you'll see that on the other side. And now we need to cut along the centre. Now, if you don't trust yourself to do it without lines drawn, what I suggest you do is draw a line along the centre, but stop 1/4 of an inch before each end, before reaching the end, like so. And then either use the ruler or draw it freehand and draw a triangle, basically, like so. And then use rotary cutter or scissors to cut straight along the centre line that you've drawn. Stop at the points, and I always stop just before because you can't be completely accurate with the rotary cutter. And then follow the lines out and cut to the corners as close as you dare without going into the stitching. Very important not to cut through the stitching. So I've gone as far as I dare. And obviously the closer you get to the stitching, the better result you'll get. So do try to get as close as you can. Like so. I just need to turn my iron on. Now, we'll get the iron. And what we need to do is push or pull the zipper facing through to the other side. And you do have to persuade it to begin with, but once you press, she'll stay. So get her as neat as you can. And press all the way along. And it's worth spending the time to really get a good crease. It will make a difference to your end result. Once you've pressed her on the back, turn it over, and this is where you get a really good press. And try to roll the seam over so that you don't see the back of the fabric, so to speak. I'll show you in a second. And any puckers and creases in the corners, do your very best to iron them away. so that when you look at the back, you can see the edge of the front on the back, but on the front you can't. That's what I mean. So just roll it slightly over, just gives it a much nicer look than if you could see the back. It just wouldn't look so good. So make sure you're happy with the pressing. When you finish pressing, you need to get the pocket piece you've already made with the zip the right side up, so your lining pieces are laying down, face down, and I'm going to lay some double-sided tape along the reverse of the box on the back, and I'll be sticking this down onto the zip. And I only remove one layer to start with, otherwise we get into a sticky mess. So you want the zipper pulled with the zip closed on the right of the pocket, and lay it as evenly as you can. Oh, the back of the zip's being unfriendly. Where it's sticking up, it's not laying nicely, so right. So I've laid that, and if you look there, it's more or less central, which is fine. And then I lift that up, and then I take the backing off the double-sided tape on this side now and lay that down. So the first thing we do is just stitch along the bottom, and once we've stitched along the bottom with this open like that, then we can fold this down, and then we stitch the side of the box along the top and down the side. So you've stitched around the box like so, and when you turn over, you'll see that on the back you've got the stitching there, which is fine. Then stitch down both sides. Don't stitch the bottom. Leave the bottom open. This will be for turning. But stitch the sides. Reinforce well at the bottom. And you'll probably find you've got a centimetre or so overhang of the one layer. Just trim them up so that they match, they equal. And that's that one side done. I'm going to add my bag label to here, and then we'll proceed with the next step. So here's the lining panel complete with pocket left open, and now we repeat to do exactly the same on another one of the lining main panels. At this stage you should have two linings with the pockets added, and both pockets have been left open at the bottom, and we put them aside, and now we move on to the final construction. The first thing we need to do is to put the back piece that you've added your straps to right side up, and I've clipped them all together out of the way. And then you get your laptop gusset, that's the thinner one that you've made, and you want the zip at the top, but you're attaching the fabric side to the bag, not the zip. And with the markings you've made earlier, and I ironed this one out, so I'm going to make a halfway marking. So with the centre marking and the one we've made earlier that's still on the bag, line them up, and I'm going to use my micro stitch gun, which is this, it's called micro stitch, to fix this in place while we sew it, and it stops it from moving. It's fantastic. I got mine from Amazon many years ago, but they're still available. I always use this for thick layers. If I haven't got thick layers, I use my stapler. And they're removable afterwards. I do have a tutorial about stitching round curves, etc., and awkward areas, but that's the stapler I use. But do take a look at my tutorial. I've got a few handy tips for tutorials on my channel, and I'm just going to continue adding it all the way round and come back. So I've clipped it all the way round. I really do recommend the micro stitch gun. It will make this stitching this so much easier. But anyway, I'm going to stitch this now at 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. Now get the remaining lining piece that doesn't have foam, and I just realised I hadn't taken this out of the machine. I've stitched it all the way around, so it's now attached. And what we need to do now is lay this right side down on top, and you're going to attach it with these sides, not this one, but the side you've just stitched on, and leave a gap at the bottom of 4 to 5 inches. So stitch all the way around. So I'm going to attach that and stitch it and come back and show you. Once you've stitched all the way around at 3/8 of an inch seam allowance and you've left your gap, just snip all the curved areas to help with once you've turned, and then you need to turn this right side out. I need to get my husband to help me with this because I have arthritic hands and would struggle with this, so I'm going to go off and get him to do that and come back when it's done. So now it's right side out. My husband actually said it wasn't very difficult at all, so I could have probably done it, but hey ho. We've got this gap that we need to close. You can hand sew it if you're good with hand sewing. If not, then you may get away with it on the machine, but you need to basically fold the edges over and sew closed there, which I'm going to do. You could possibly even glue it with a really good glue like the Gutterman HT2 that would hold closed. So you could glue it if you're really no good with a hand needle, hand sewing. But close it as nicely as you can. I've stitched the gap closed by hand using what they call slip stitches. It was hard for me to show because I have to stitch very close up to my face to see the stitches properly. So I suggest you Google how to do slip stitches or look for YouTube videos. There's plenty out there, and that's how you get a good result. Now we want to get the lining main with foam and place it right side up. Then place the back piece you've been making right side up also, and line up the markings that you have all the way round. Just got to look for mine because they faded through the ironing. And then line them up, and with the zip at the top. And once you've lined them up all the way around, stitch around with a 1/4 inch seam allowance, just baste it. You're not stitching fully, so just do large basting stitches. So I've basted it all the way round, and then we just pop that aside for now. And then what we need to do is get our main front and the gusset that we made earlier, and one of the linings with a zipper pocket, and we have to basically repeat what we've just done. And we're putting the gusset all the way around like so, and then we'll have all that closed in and we'll add the lining. So I believe that's how we want to add it. Yes, with the handle on this side, because we want the handle at the back of the bag, so the narrow part of the gusset is away from the main front, so it's like that. So I'm going to join this together and show it to you, and then join the other one and show it to you. To show you before we went further, that obviously the gusset has to be this way around, so that the right side, the outer, is on the inside. And just before you do anything, line up the markings that you've made previously, top and bottom, so that you get it spread out evenly. I'm using my micro stitch gun to join this together initially before sewing. It just makes it a lot easier, like so. So I will do that. So I've basted all the way around, so yours should look something like this now, like a little baby's top. And now we get our remaining lining main without foam, but with a pocket that's got the open end. Make sure you open your zip, and then you need to fold all this in, and then attach this face down so that the right sides are together for the lining. And then we'll come back to that when but we're stitching at 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. So I've stitched all the way round, and I've snipped all the curved areas just to help with them when they've been turned. It's very bulky. I had to use my zipper foot because my walking foot kept slipping off. So I suggest you use your zipper foot if you can't use your walking foot. I also found this to be rather baggy at the top. I'm hoping it is due to the bulk, and that once I've turned it, it's going to be fine. I hope. So we shall see. But now I'm going to turn it through this hole. So once we've turned it through the pocket, we don't seal the pocket yet. We turn it so that the exterior is inside and the lining is on the outside. And we get our back that we did earlier, and we've got I'm just going to put them out of the way. We have the exterior face down, so that the exteriors are facing each other, and the basted lining with the foam attached on top. And we need to go round attaching all around the raw edges and stitching at 1/4 inch seam allowance, just basting it. Okay, so I've basted it, and now to do something that you look at and think, no, that's not gonna work, but I've been assured it does. So here goes. We need to get our remaining lining piece with pocket and lay it face down onto the lining. Easy. But then the magic comes, and we have to attach it to all these raw sides around the bottom. And I must admit, I messaged Tanya and I said, Tara, I messaged Tara and I said, tell me that's not the case. And she said, yeah, and you can do it. So I'm going to do it because other people have done it, so I know it can be done. And I should be very proud of myself. So if I can do it, so can you. Don't be put off by it, because this bag's going to be brilliant. It's a genius pattern. So I'm going to attach it, and what you need to do is start with the curved edge first, and however you're going to attach it. I am going to use my trusty micro stitch gun to attach it all the way around before we sew it. You do what works for you, but do the curved edge first, then the opposite edge, then the sides. I shall come back and show you when I've done it. Okay, thanks to my micro stitch gun, here she is like a little pod. Oops. I've gone all the way around with my micro stitch gun. Now to sew her at 3/8 of an inch seam allowance all the way around. Wish me luck. Now I want to show you an alternative method for finishing the construction of your bag. Now, from where I last showed you, I tried to sew it on my machine, but you really have to hold it in there to stitch around. And I have arthritis in my hands and wrists, and I have a condition in my hand where I've got benign tumours on my tendons which pull on my fingers and have made my hand very weak. So I was struggling for 2 days, doing literally an inch at a time, then having to rest because of the pain it caused me. And after 2 days, I messaged Tara and I said, Tara, I can't finish the bag. I'm just not strong enough. I have arthritis and I can't keep it under the machine. Now, there's two things. Firstly, I've used Pellon Flex Foam for my foam, which is brilliant foam. I love using it. It's very sturdy. But what I didn't realise was that Annie's Soft and Stable is one that Tara used and recommends, because it's a nice foam, but it's not quite as solid and thick. So it reduces the bulk a little bit. I've used like one of the thickest and bulkiest foams out there. So folding all this in to stitch around the edge, it just wouldn't go. It was just too bulky. So if you've used a bulky foam, or if you have arthritis, there's an alternative method for closing your bag. And that is, you have your back piece and you have your remaining piece of lining, and stitch them at 1/4 inch seam allowance together. So you're stitching this wrong sides together all the way round. Then once you've done that, lay your bag in and join it round. I will be showing you this because that's how I'm doing it. And once you've joined it round, you're going to have the exposed edges. So the method Tara told me, which I thought was a genius idea, so I'm so glad I spoke to her, and that is to finish it off with bias binding all the way around. So I've made my bias binding to match my fabric. Now I didn't have enough of the lilac, because you have to cut your binding on the bias of the fabric diagonally across the fabric. So this is what I've got left basically, and that's the straight of the fabric, and I was cutting diagonally 2-inch wide strips, and I just didn't have enough of this lilac left. So I've done it in the fabric, and it won't matter. I mean, it'll just be a nice contrast. And at least it looks like it's meant to be there rather than not meant to be there, if you understand what I mean. We're making a, sort of a bit of a feature of it. So there is a video I've got on YouTube. I will give the link on the description of this video on how to make and use bias binding. So I show how to do it. So take a look, and you just end up with lots of strips that you put together. But it's important that you put them the right way together, with the right direction of the print, etc. So do take a look. And I've made lots of bias binding, loads, to do it with. So I shall be taking you through the steps. So if you have arthritis, or you've used very thick foam, etc., etc., and you're having trouble stitching it the way I first showed you to finish off, I think you're going to enjoy this method. Doesn't rule us out then of having to make it. It means us weaklings can still make these difficult constructions. So thanks to Tara. Here's the method coming up. So as I said, the first thing we need to do is we get our back that we've constructed, and we lay our last remaining lining piece right side up. So the back's right side down, the lining's right side up, so the wrong sides are together. I would also say to stitch the pocket close on this one as well, because we won't be turning it with this. So stitch this pocket closed as well before you do that. So I'm going to go and stitch the pocket closed and then attach this around the edge. Okay, so I've attached the lining all the way around the edge, very close to the edge, like 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. And then I need to get the front portion of the bag and put the back right side down so that all the right sides are together, and as you can see the lining sides are together. And we're going to join at the marks that we made earlier and attach this part of the bag by stitching. I'm going to use my micro stitch gun to clip everything together and then stitch around as 1/8 to 1/4 of an inch seam allowance. So that's what you need to do next. Okay, I've sewn around the edge. You still have a fight if you've used thick foam. It is still quite a fight, but it's doable. It really is doable. You just have to persevere, take your time, slow and steady. And then once you've done it, trim the edges off to make them nice and neat, and try to cut one side of the layer of foam and leave the other intact so that you're tapering the edges, so that you've not got thick chunky edges for the bias binding. I couldn't think of the name of it. So I've done that, and I've also closed this pocket now because we don't need to turn the bag through this pocket. So I've stitched the end closed and push that right down inside and close that off. So the only thing left, and the beauty is, of course, when we've done it, we can turn it through the opening nice and easy. So that's the advantage of doing it this way. It's a nice easy turn. Now, for attaching the binding, I really do strongly suggest don't try doing it on a machine, because it will be quite a battle to stitch it neatly and evenly, and you really want it to look its best. So the best thing to do would be to do it by hand. Now, if you've done the 2-inch wide and then you fold the edges in 1/4 inch, you'll have 1.5 inches to play with, sort of thing, if you know what I mean. So you'll put your your bias binding on like that, fold it over and fold it over like that, so it will fit perfectly. The way I'm going to fit it, first of all, I'll want the join to be at the very bottom so it's not seeable, and the way I'm going to attach it is by using good old double-sided tape all the way around, and then bring it up, and I'm going to slip stitch it by hand all the way around. And yes, it will take a while, but it will look lovely, and better than any machine. Please do take a look at videos on YouTube for slip stitching. It is very easy. Once you pick up the habit of the way you're doing it, it's very easy to do. I would show you, only my eyesight's so bad, I have to, you know, stitch it close up to my eyes, so I can't film and do that. But please do, there's plenty of videos on YouTube for slip stitching. And I'll try and find one and put a link to a very good lesson or tutorial on it. So have a look in the description of this video to see if I have managed to put a link there. And practice your slip stitching first of all. Practice. And then come and do it on your bag, and you'll be so proud of yourself when you've done it. You really will. You'll have achieved that, and it's done by hand, and it looks really smart and better than any machine could do. So once I've slip stitched that, I would then do the same, fold over, attach double-sided tape or glue, and then slip stitch it. The reason why I'll use double-sided tape or glue is to just keep it down nice and neat, so it makes it easier to sew. So I'm going to go off and do that. I will, when I come to the join, I'll show you how to do the join so that you've not got raw edges. So as I come to it, I shall come back and show you. Okay, I've attached this all the way around with double-sided tape, and I've come towards the join now, and what I've done is I'm overlapping by about 1 inch. I've cut on the diagonal and then folded it over and used double-sided tape to keep the ends folded over. Then I've put more double-sided tape along the folded edge, and I press it down to give it a nice, neat, folded closure, as you can see. And I will slip stitch that when I'm slip stitching the rest. And that's how you end the bias binding. So now I'm going to slip stitch all the way around the edge, and then I'm going to use double-sided tape to fold this down and stitch around. I will come back when it's all done. I thought I'd have a go at trying to show you slip stitching rather than giving you a link. I had a thought, and I thought I really should show you. So initially, when you start off with a thread that you've got a knot at the end in, and you go underneath to start, and then you come through at the very edge and then you go back in just underneath the hole you've gone in from, and then go along about 1/4 of an inch to 1/8 of an inch and come up very slightly through there, like so. And that's why it's a slip stitch. You've slipped underneath, and then again go directly underneath where you've just gone in, sorry, you've just come out of, and then along a little bit and up through, like so. So you're not really seeing many stitches. You're not seeing the stitches because they're underneath your sewing. Oh, and you really need to go in from the edge. And it takes a little while, but can you see how neat it looks? We've started here and gone around. And it really does look very nice when you do it like this. So again, underneath where you've just come out of, and then along a little bit, out, and so on. So, and the more experience you get, the faster you'll go. But it's worth taking your time to get the best results, and I'm very fussy about how far I come out, etc., and so on. So there we have it, and you just do it all the way around. Okay, I've stitched it by hand with the slip stitches all the way around. The wrinkles are inevitable. I did make a slight error. What I should have done was stitched this side first and stretched the binding, and it would have stretched on the other side, but I just didn't think. Stitch the outside first, and to be honest with you, I could have unpicked it, but my fingers are so sore from the hand stitching, I didn't want to do it again. And I'm going to keep the bag for my use, so it's not the end of the world. So if you do this method, stitch the binding on the inside and pull it, because that's why you stitch it on the make it on the bias so that it stretches, and then the outside will be fine, it will stretch. But anyway, I'm pleased with it. And now we just need to, the handy thing of doing this way, we don't have to turn it through the pockets. We can just flip it right side out. Nice and easy. So it's a bit of a cheap method. But I'm happy doing this way. And I actually think it looks okay in there, doesn't it? I mean, it's not unsightly. And that's the bag done. And now we just have to finish off this back part with the straps. Okay, now we just need to add the last part. You'll find this quite comical, but I had a mental block and I thought, oh no, I've installed these upside down, because initially this part was there. So I cut the webbing, swapped them over, stitched this over, no big deal, it's not an issue. And I've made this part, and I realised that it was fine as it was. So yeah, I didn't need to do that, but it's fine. It's just one of those things. I thought I'd done it wrong, and it turns out I hadn't, but it's been a while since I've used them. Anyway, so whichever way you've added your buckle, it's fine. Now we need to add the slider, and making sure that we've got it the right way up. We go in at the top and through, and then we go in and then through on the buckle, like so. And then we go back up through the slider on the inside, and down again, and then I want to give as long as possible. We can undo that part, and we bring the end piece back over onto the loop side and stitch. Okay, I've made that clear. So you've gone through the slider into the buckle and down again through the slider and then folding over on itself, and we'll stitch across there, or you could add rivets if you want to, and that will be the web buckle attached. I'm just going to sew this part. So that's it, stitched, attached, and then clip in, and that's our bag made. There we have her. Just need to plump her out a bit because I've squashed her a bit. But yeah, so I hope you found this tutorial helpful. I thoroughly enjoyed making her. She was a challenge. I've never made a bag like her. The way she went together I found to be unique. How Tara thought of this, I don't know. Her imagination is amazing, and to have planned this out and thought about how to put it together is beyond me. And that's why I make bags and I don't design them. But our designers out there have a talent, that's for sure. So have a go at this. Look for the links that I've put on the description for how to do things. Yeah, enjoy making your bag. Bye.